Good evening and welcome to Tyngsborough TV Live. This is our 36th Middlesex Debate. We have had a ton of fun putting this all together, and I want to welcome everybody who's come out tonight. I have an amazing crew that's helped me put this whole thing together. First and foremost, though, I want to welcome our guests, who are Colleen Gary and Ray Lazinski. Colleen Gary is our incumbent. She is a 24-year veteran of the House of Representatives here in the state, which is fantastic. I think that's a really excellent run. And Ray Lazinski is our challenger, Republican challenger. I didn't mention you're the Democrat, right, Colleen, and Ray is our Republican challenger. So what's going to happen tonight? Actually, quickly, let me introduce my guests as well. I apologize, guys. Okay, let's cut over to, we've got Bill Gilman from Your Drake Today.
Thanks for having me here.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome. And Teddy Panos from 980 WCAP.
Thanks for inviting me to participate, Steve.
You're very welcome, guys. You're very, very welcome. All right, here we go. So we're going to get into the meat of this. So November 6th, everybody that's watching this, hopefully if you are a voter, you will be going to the polls, and you are going to be voting in one of many races that are coming up this November 6th. One of them is going to be for the 36th Middlesex District seat. And that is the seat currently held by Representative Colleen Gary. Tonight's the whole goal of tonight's event, it is a debate, but we want you to learn about who the candidates are, how they stand on the issues, so you're going to hear directly from them. I want to mention that everybody at home has the opportunity through multiple ways to watch this and chime in and ask questions. So you can watch this on Tyngsborough TV, Comcast Channel 8, Verizon 29, Drake TV, Comcast 99, 980 WCAP. You can also catch it streaming on Facebook and on YouTube on the pages that we share it across, as well as at tyngsboroughma.gov and at datv.org. So you can watch this thing and hear this thing a whole bunch of different ways. Whichever way is your favorite, you can watch or listen any one of those ways. You can also ask questions. Julia, if you could throw up the lower third really quickly just so we can show everybody how you can contact. So you can email us at debate@tyngsboroughma.gov. You can tweet us, #36thdebate. You can also ask questions via Facebook and YouTube, and you can also ask questions via telephone. So I've opened this up as many ways as possible to make this as open as possible for everybody out there. Telephone number and all the other information are on the bottom of the screen, and those will remain up for the remainder of the evening. So if you have any questions or you're wondering how to do it, just look at the bottom of the screen and you'll be able to find out how to ask your questions. With all that said, I've introduced our candidates, I've introduced our guests. We're going to do a quick coin toss to determine who is going to be answer the first question, and we'll continue in that order. So, Colleen, since you are the incumbent, I'm going to let you call it in the air. You've got heads, is Walking Liberty, and tails is the eagle on the back. So call it in the air.
Heads.
Okay, it is tails.
All right.
So Ray will go first, and will remain that way for the evening. So it'll go Ray, Colleen, Ray, Colleen. Now, I also want to mention, too, that we're going to be moving through our various media partners. So Bill is going to ask the first question. Teddy will ask the second question. The third question will be asked by Amaris from the Lowell Sun. And then I will ask a community question that we have that you will be sending us in. And we also have folks that are going to be asking live community questions as well as some speed round questions. So we've got a whole bunch of different cool things that are going to happen tonight. So I hope you guys will stay tuned and watch this. We're going to go till 7:45 with the actual debate. We're going to take a break at 6:45 for 20 minutes so everybody can collect themselves and catch their breath a little bit. And then for the last 15 minutes, we'll peel off, and Bill, Teddy, and myself will just chat about the evening and how everything went. So with all that said, I'd like to get started. So let's begin with Mr. Gilman. If you would please ask your first question of Mr. Ray Lazinski.
All right. And again, thank you for putting this event together, Steve.
You're very welcome.
Thanks for inviting us to participate, and thank you for both of the candidates for participating. Much has been made over the course of this year about judicial accountability, specifically centered around Judge Feely up on the North Shore and some recent controversial decisions that he has had. The legislature, according to the state constitution, the legislature is currently the oversight body for the judiciary. So the question is the legislature doing its job in keeping oversight on the judiciary? And if not, what else can they be doing? Should judges maybe be elected? Or should maybe they be have their work gone over every 5 years or so by the governor's council? So how would you say the legislature's done on this?
Well, I'd have to say that the legislature has failed on this. There is the Judiciary Committee has the authority to review judges, and Representative Lyons from Andover brought that to the committee, and it never got out of committee. And I think that brings up another real problem with how things are done up on Beacon Hill right now, is that these committees, we don't know how they vote. And you know, when you look at a case like Judge Feely, that's a clear-cut case of someone who needs some kind of judicial reprimand or dismissal. And I for one, I'd like to know how, the people in that committee voted. Who were the ones that said that shouldn't come out of committee? And I think that speaks to another issue. Is one of the main reasons I'm running is because I strongly believe that the state needs to get back to some kind of balanced two-party representation up on Beacon Hill. And I think if we can get to that point and start moving to that point, that would help with these kind of transparency issues. But we definitely need to work on transparency in Beacon Hill. I for one think all the committee votes should be made public to the citizens, so we can see what's going on.
Okay.
All right.
And
Representative Gary.
Absolutely. So first of all, I actually signed on with the Republicans. I am the most bipartisan member of the House, and I signed on with Representative Jim Lyons and the other Republicans to have Judge Feely removed. I have to correct Ray, because the Judiciary Committee does not have control over the judges and oversights of the individual judges. That would be up to the governor and the governor's council. And we asked them to look at this, and he has not done that yet. So it is not the Judiciary Committee, but in fact, every vote that the Judiciary Committee does take is all public record. People just have to ask for it. It is all recorded and it is all transparent. So people just have to call and ask for that, and you will get that. So there are those circumstances, and if we want to talk about bipartisanship, the governor has not taken action. The Republican governor has not taken action to remove Judge Feely, and I have acted to try to remove Judge Feely. So I think it is important. I think that when you've got people who are selling drugs and they're not a legal citizen, and a judge takes that into consideration rather than the fact that the drugs that they're selling are killing people on the streets, then that judge should not be there. I think it should be something that maybe they do get reviewed every 5 years or so forth. I think that there needs to be a look at not doing it for life. That may hurt me as a lawyer, but certainly I think that they do need to have some kind of review. I had actually thought that the Judiciary Committee could take over that aspect, but actually with the debacle down in DC, I don't know that that's such a great idea.
Okay. Good.
Okay, thank you.
Any follow-ups to that, Bill? Or are you good?
Well, just to clarify, because what I had been told, and actually it was by Representative Lyons, he was under the impression that the legislature was the oversight body for the judiciary. You're saying that that is not accurate,
No.
that it's the executive branch.
Right.
Okay.
And the judicial branch. The judicial branch can have control
Right.
over their own judges.
Ray, you want to test something?
I do have one question. It was also my understanding that the Judiciary Committee could recommend a judge for impeachment, correct?
Right, but that
Right.
has not been an amendment.
Right. But the Judiciary Committee could recommend the judge for impeachment, and then the state legislator could act, correct?
The legislature could, but the governor would be the one that would be the one doing it.
I'm not quite sure I understand. So, but
If you want it quickly, then the governor should do it,
Yeah.
and the governor's council.
but the Judiciary Committee could recommend the judge for impeachment, and then the state legislature would have impeachment proceedings, correct?
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Excellent. That was good. All right. Teddy, to you.
Good evening, Representative Gary and Mr. Lazinski. Thank you for subjecting yourself to my questions. Governor Baker is boasting during his campaign of a $1 billion budget surplus, a figure that's been confirmed to me by another Democratic state representative as being accurate. Should that money be returned to the taxpayers? If not, how should it be spent or allocated?
Actually, Teddy, just today, the House passed the surplus budget, and it put in some money going back to roads and local roads and bridges, include $10 million to go back to the Merrimack Valley to help with the overtime and so forth with the gas episode. And a big portion of it is going into the rainy day account. Brings it up over $2 billion. Having been there during the down times of the economy, we need to have over $2 billion in our rainy day fund. And I agree with us putting more money into the rainy day fund because there always will be a rainy day down the line.
Ray, did you want to?
Yeah, I would rather see that money had come back to the cities and towns. Most towns are having a hard time financing road repairs and money for schools. The local aid, the budget has increased, over $10 billion over the last 10 years, and the general fund local aid has been pretty much flat. So I think it should have come back to the cities and towns for the general fund.
As a follow-up, come back to them to use as they see fit?
Yes, yeah, it's a general fund. Yeah.
If I could, just clarify that when you talk about local aid, you're talking the unrestricted general aid, and that's $1 billion. You're talking the education money, which is almost $5 billion out of a $40 billion budget. So that's we're at a record high for local aid coming back to our communities. Never mind whether it's special ed reimbursement, whether it's regional transportation reimbursement, whether it's grants for police and fire. That one unrestricted general local aid is not the only local aid that comes in, and we've been able to provide more and more to it. We're at a high record level of education money coming back to the communities. And as I said, part of this money that is the surplus is coming back for local roads and bridges.
Excellent. Anything else to add to that, Teddy? No, you're good? Okay. All right, so our next question is going to be from Amaris Castillo from the Lowell Sun. Let me bring her mic up real quick. And there you go, Amaris.
Thank you both for your participation in this debate. My first question is, if elected or if re-elected, will you work full-time as state representative or juggle your jobs and your elected positions as well?
I've stated previously that if I'm elected, I'm going to keep my job as well. The first thing I did when I thought about making the decision to run was, I checked with the state ethics to make sure it was okay. And then I spoke with my bosses, and I spoke with, other people to see if I could, be able to juggle the situation, and got an understanding for what's involved. And my bosses were very understanding. They understand that I'll have to be going to Boston and back and forth, but they supported me 100%, even to the point that maybe reducing my hours if it comes to that. But I really feel, I'm a 25-year private sector guy, and I'm used to working 60, 70 hours a week. I'm not married. My daughter is grown and out of the house, and I'm confident that I can handle both duties. And what really prompted me to do this is, if I can maintain my job, I'm going to be a fiercely independent legislator the whole time. I'm not going to be beholden to any special interest groups. So I think that would be a really strong point, that I could be very independent and while I'm serving as a legislator. And as far as constituent services, I'm going to be available all nights and the weekends. So that's the plan.
Okay, Colleen?
Well, unfortunately, I don't think Mr. Lozinski understands the job. It is much more than voting on Wednesdays. It's much more involved in going into hearings in the mornings and the afternoons, sometimes several in a day. It's involved being in the community, whether it's nighttime meetings, breakfast meetings, lunch meetings, meeting constituents here and there, being out on weekends and nights. My job as a part-time attorney, I can work around my legislative schedule, and I do that. In addition, I have my law office in Drake, which is completely open to constituents to come in. I have one of my aides who works there to work on constituent matters if people come in. So we are fully accessible. It is a full-time job for me. I don't know. I would never be owing anyone, regardless of whether they donated to me, whether they supported me, whether they held signs for me. My only allegiance is the people of Drake and Tyngsborough, and I've done that for 24 years, and they've agreed with it.
Excellent. Do you have a follow-up to that?
No.
Okay.
Thank you both.
All right, excellent. All right, so I'm going to ask the next question. This is going to be a community question, so this is one that we have gotten from the community. What do the candidates feel is the main issue facing the district?
I think they're different in...
Actually, to Ray first, yeah.
Oh, I thought he started.
No, I think
For the beginning of each question, it starts with you, Ray.
No,
Oh, we're not switching back and forth?
Yeah, it's her turn.
I thought we were switching back.
No, we were staying with Ray
Oh.
first, then Colleen, Ray first, then Colleen. Yeah, just because he won the coin toss.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just go with it.
Okay, we're going. We're going.
Yeah.
Okay. Certainly, both the towns, there are issues facing the town. I've done a lot of door knocking, and in Drake, most of the concern has been with the schools. Certainly in Tyngsborough, I hear a lot about roads and sidewalks. But I think the overwhelming issue for these towns and every other town is the opioid crisis that we're dealing with right now. Everybody knows somebody. That was the time I spent knocking doors. The thing that shocked me and struck me the most is how many grandparents are raising children because the parents are addicted.
Mm-hmm.
We have to get serious about this. I was disappointed that Speaker DeLeo pulled that 72-hour hold out of the bill. We have to take serious steps at this point. Now, we've made some great strides with adding rehabilitation beds, but now there's talk about the clean injection facilities, which I'm dead set against. We have to break the cycle of addiction, and injection centers aren't going to do that. I would like to see us start focusing more on prevention, and specifically more about dosing limits. And one thing I'd really like to dig into, and it's something nobody really talks about, is the role of mass health. How many pills are being paid for by mass health? Now that's the doctors who are prescribing it, but it's our tax money that's paying for it. And I specifically know of an individual who overdosed and died, and they were getting their pills paid for through mass health. So it's not a comfortable conversation. I understand that, but we have to start asking some serious questions because there's too much at stake here. 2,000 people died in Massachusetts last year from opioid overdose. So we have to take the gloves off and get serious.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Colleen?
Thank you. Absolutely, the number one issues, I think, in the communities are economic development. Being here on the New Hampshire border is certainly a detriment to some of the businesses here to try to balance the inequity of the sales tax and so forth. So we've been working very diligently with both communities and with the governor, and we've been able to get a $2.5 million Mass Works grant for Drake and $2.5 million work grant for Tyngsborough to get some more economic development in the community. In Drake, it's going to be 300 full-time jobs with the Arbors, the Genesis, and Lowell General going there, Circle Health going there. With Flint Corner, it's going to be more housing, it's going to be more redevelopment of that plaza, and more jobs out in that way as well. So I think with that extra money coming in from the economic development, then you can help with everything else, the roads, the paving and so forth, the schools and everything that people care about. So economic development is going to help to increase the budget. In regards to the opioid situation, absolutely we all know that that has been critical to everyone's attention in the last several years. And as a matter of fact, the legislature has passed 3 bills in the last 3 years to address some of the opioid addiction issues. The governor has been leading the way on a national level as well as a state level. Fortunate to say that in the last year, the deaths in Massachusetts and the deaths in the Merrimack Valley have actually gone down.
Oh, wow.
So from the prior year, we're hopeful that that will continue. We are doing things on prevention. We are doing things on the mandating prescribers look at the logs to make sure that people aren't going from doctor to doctor. In regards to Mass Health and some of the others, yes, it is. Just because someone's on Mass Health doesn't mean that they shouldn't be able to get the pills that they deserve and they need. One of the things that we're looking at is all alternatives that we can have for care for those that have a long-term pain issue. And there are many people in the community who have that, whether it's fibromyalgia or whether it's from cancer or whatever it is. There are people with injuries and so forth that need pain relief, and we're trying to find out. We've done doing a study in regards to chiropractic and a bunch of the other types of medical, more humanistic medical ideas. So we're looking at all of that, and I did vote with the governor against the speaker on the 72-hour bill hold for the hospital.
Excellent. Okay. So I'm going to ask the next community question, and that is going to be, we'll start off with Ray. How do you propose raising additional funds for repairing our roads in Tyngsborough? Do you want to go back? We can go back
We
and
can
forth.
go back
That's
and
fine.
forth.
Yeah.
I think it's more fair.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fine. Yeah. So let's do that.
Say that again then.
So how do you propose raising additional funds for repairing our roads in Tyngsborough?
Well,
Very big issue in Tyngsborough right now, too.
absolutely. I know that we want to see about getting Norris Road done and the sidewalks in that location and clearing that up. Obviously, Middlesex Road needs some work. We have been working with the state on that. We're waiting for the next step of the sewer project to be done, and then we've got the commitment of the Mass Highway to come in and pave the whole length of Middlesex Road. But it would be kind of crazy to do it now and then have to reopen it again. So that's going to be done. We've got like I said, the Mass Works grant that's doing the infrastructure out in Flint Corner, which is important. The way that I've done it in the past is we've been able to put them into a bond bill. And like in Drake, we had Arlington Road. That was a $6 million project. Again, it was one that was a little curvy, one that the cows made years ago. And we were able to get sidewalks in there. And it was a mess while they were doing it. But once it was over, it's been much more safe for people walking and so forth. We did it on Lakeview Avenue. I still want to look more at Lakeview Avenue about the right-hand turn into the school complex. There's a backup now all the way up to Collinsville for that. We have another $5 million going into the Nashua Road, Lakeview Avenue project. So I'd be looking to make sure that we could put a proposal in and get it into a bond bill and have it go through the process that way. Earmark something for our communities.
Excellent. And to Ray?
Two things. First of all, this goes back to local aid again. The roads in Tyngsborough, we're talking the residential roads and Middlesex. But for the residential roads, that's the towns that do that. We need to get more money from the state for local aid for those roads. Now, I agree with Colleen that, the $1 billion for the general fund, that's only part of local aid, right? But that number has been stagnant for many, many years, right? Our budget has increased $10 billion over the last 10 years, and it still stays $1 billion for the local roads. Now, as far as Middlesex, that's a state road, right? I think it should have been repaired quite some time ago. I mean, the sewer is going in now, and the timing works out for that. But that road's been in bad shape for a long time. I think the state needs to do a better job at getting money down to the towns for repair roads, sidewalks, the general fund.
If I could follow up.
Sure, absolutely.
We
Go ahead.
do, actually. The state does give Chapter 90 monies to the communities for them to decide what they want to do with their roads. And that money has continued. I think the last bill we did was $300 million that went out to the communities. I don't have the actual figures of what Drake and Tyngsborough received. Before that, we had, one year it was $200 million, another year was $300 million, and that money goes directly back to the communities to use in the locations that they feel is most appropriate. And in regards to the local aid issue, the governor made a promise that general local aid would go up at the same percentage that revenue went up, and it has. It has gone up 3.4%, the same amount as the revenue has come into the Commonwealth. So it has gone up. Maybe not as much as you want, but it has gone up.
Definitely not as much as I want. And I agree that the last couple of years it's gone up, but then there was a period prior to that where it actually went down. All right, so we're behind. All right?
We had what is called the worst depression since the Great Depression. So, of course, some things were going to go down at that point. You know, I was there and we did the best we could to provide for our communities, and we did provide for those communities. Everybody understood that it was the biggest depression since the Great Depression.
I understand that. All right? My point is this. The state budget has gone up considerably, much more than the rate of inflation or 2% or anything like that. And our local aid money coming back to the general fund has not. And that's something we need to do better.
And what would you suggest we cut? Because 41% of our budget is mass health.
Mass health by far is the biggest part of the budget. I agree.
And that has increased the most.
Right. But, I mean, let's look at the cost that illegal immigration has brought. Right? From most estimates I see, the cost to the state between schools and insurance is about $2 billion. Right? That would go a long way to fixing our roads and bridges. Right?
I'd love to see that figure, and we'll be looking forward to it at the next debate, where you got that information.
I will bring that.
Yep.
I will bring that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right, so we're gonna move on from here because I think that actually was a really good conversation, though. So I'm gonna defer to Bill for the next question.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I guess this would be directed to Mr. Lisinski. I'd like to go back to something that you had mentioned earlier regarding the opioid crisis. Local communities are being asked to take a more active role in the fight against the opioid crisis. Things like, as you mentioned, clean injection sites, detox centers, rehab facilities, sober houses. My question to both of the candidates is, what types of facilities do you feel are appropriate for communities like Tyngsborough and Drake?
Certainly, clean injection sites. I'm not in favor of any town, so definitely not for Drake and Tyngsborough. But, as far as sober houses, I mean, we have to recognize, I mean, these are people in our community that are having this addiction, right? So we need the facilities locally as well. I'm really, all gloves, all hands on deck. We have to deal with this, right? And whatever we can do, whether it's transition facilities or whatever, we need to do it, right? And in addition to just that, we need to get more serious about law enforcement. I'm for one that I'll say, I'm for taking any help we can get, whether it's ICE, FBI, anybody, to cracking down. And I don't want to harp on the sanctuary cities in Lawrence or the illegal immigration, but we just saw the huge drug bust in Lawrence, right? If we got our immigration policy in control, that would go a long way to helping this epidemic as well.
Okay, and Colleen?
Well, then I think Mr. Lisinski should be running for Congress if he wants to take care of the immigration issue. Certainly, I think that in regards to the opioid addiction, there are many issues that we can handle in our communities. And I know we have Erin's House in Drake. It's a great facility for women after they finish at Megan's House to move on to another step down. I certainly would love to see more of those programs come into the community. I do have real concerns about safe injection. I know someone myself who had, it took 3 Narcans to bring him back. And I don't think that there ever is a completely safe injection site. They may not be able to bring somebody back. And to give that out as some option, I think, is a false option. I think I am supportive of the medical assisted assistance of methadone, Suboxone. I think those are important. I do, however, believe that those need to be in a city where they have more law enforcement involved. Because now those are the drugs that people are using instead of heroin and so forth. They're picking up and they're using those as well. So I think smaller communities like Dracut and Tyngsborough, we don't have the force to be able to handle that, where I think that the cities can handle that. And there is transportation for people to get back and forth. I've talked to people who work at those facilities, people that go at 4:30 in the morning and go off to a job. I think that it's an important thing. And we've also allowed in the last legislation to allow for our hospitals, emergency rooms, to actually have give the methadone or the Suboxone to a patient coming in after an overdose, so that we can try to get them into treatment. So I think that those things are possible. I think that homes like Aaron's home, Zach's house, Megan's house, I think that there would be a great addition to either one of these communities, because, as Ray said, it is the people in our district that it'd be nice to be able to have them locally.
You mentioned about the methadone type of clinics. So would you feel the same way in regard to detox facilities, that kind of that first stop on the way to sobriety, that would not be well suited for these towns because of the lower level of law enforcement?
I'm not so sure about that, because that's more of a medical facility. So, we're bringing Genesis into Dracut. I don't think that would be as much an issue. Okay. You might have people trying to bring pills in, but
sure.
I don't think you're going to see people, maybe robbing somebody on the way out, or jumping them in as they come out with their methadone.
Right.
So
sure.
That's the difference I see.
All right. And just to give Mr. Lazinski a chance, detox centers?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think I agree with Colleen that, I'm sorry. Colleen's okay?
Yep.
Yeah, 'cause you keep calling me Mr. Lazinski. Ray is fine.
Okay.
I agree that these towns could handle that. I think the Genesis facility is going to be a great success in Dracut.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay. Let me just quickly, really quick, just reset so everybody knows you're watching Tyngsborough TV's 36 Middlesex Debate. You can catch this debate on multiple avenues. I just want to apologize if you're watching on Comcast or Verizon, and I'm going to ask you a question about this. The candidates, you can watch in the streams. Apparently Comcast and Verizon are having some issues with the signal for some reason. So, but the streams are up, so you can watch it on Facebook and YouTube and listen to it on 90 WCAP. So maybe the candidates can work on that and pressure those guys. And so now I'm going to throw it over to Teddy to ask the next question.
All right, I'm going to keep it here on the addiction crisis, because, as you said, both of you have indicated it's very important. It's decimating our communities and our families. The challenge, of course, is money. And where do you find it? Every government agency, whether you want roads or education or treatment services, requires money. Speaker DeLeo originally committed to earmarking $50 million a year from the taxes on the recreational sales of marijuana, if and when they ever start to come in, towards addiction services. But that money is currently slated to be put into the general fund. And again, who knows what happens once it's there. Will you file or support legislation to earmark that money into treatment services or educational programs to combat addiction?
Absolutely, I will. We need to dedicate the funds to work on these addictions. And I would even go so far as saying that maybe we should. I'm not a tax increase guy, and I'll tell you, I signed a tax pledge, and I was concerned about it because I said, the one thing I would increase the tax on is marijuana sales, but nothing else but marijuana sales, because I don't feel that the 3% is enough to carry the expenses that we're going to incur just with the marijuana. So yes, I would definitely file legislation to earmark. I think it's huge.
Okay. Colleen?
Yes, I would absolutely file legislation for that. In addition, we did file the bill we filed was $180 million for Substance Abuse Bureau. It included 5 new recovery centers, as well as, and I think one of the biggest things in this whole epidemic is the stigma that's attached. And one of the things that I think is we've done in the last few years, which is awesome, is that we no longer put the women in Framingham State if they've been sectioned for being a danger to themselves. They no longer go there to Framingham. They go to a treatment center. The men no longer go to Bridgewater State Treatment Center. They go to a treatment center of their own. So I think that the state has made some great progress in that. And certainly we've got the local communities. We all know that unfortunately the moms and dads who have lost people have taken up the job of filling in as many gaps as possible, and we thank all of them, from the Griffin family and Grover family and all of those who have helped with these local projects. And we still have Tewksbury State Hospital, the Sheehan program out there as well. So we are committed to continuing this, and I would file legislation to mandate a certain percentage.
A brief follow-up on that, though. A lot of the money, as I watched recently, some federal money came in to Massachusetts, and it's also a New Hampshire problem, and I would imagine across the country. A lot of that money, once the states start allocating, it starts getting allocated into other government agencies, to sheriff departments, to the correctional facilities, to local law enforcement. Very little of that money seems to trickle down into opening new beds, which we desperately need. How do you kind of get that money into the hands of the day-to-day treatment professionals? And call me a cynic, but I think some of that money starts to disappear when it ends up in the hands of another government agency and gets redirected.
Right. And I think that's one thing we have to watch very carefully is once these nonprofits, and I know it's not the local ones that we're talking about, but the nonprofits end up getting higher and higher salaries for the executives, and that prevents it from going to the actual beds and so forth. So we need to keep a watch on that. But certainly I think earmarking it and the 5 new recovery centers and step-down centers, I think certainly that there's been a commitment made in this budget.
Great questions all around. Did you want to ask any other follow-up, Teddy? You good? Okay. So our next question is going to be from Amaris Castillo from the Lowell Sun. Let me bring her up here. And go ahead, Amaris.
So on the same vein of substance abuse and the opioid crisis, my question is, what would you propose as a plan to prevent substance abuse among our district's youth? And would you be in support of introducing Narcan to local public schools?
Is it my turn? Okay.
Yep.
So first and foremost, we've been doing substance abuse treatment, substance abuse prevention education in the communities for many years, whether it was a DARE program or different things like that. I know that we'd hope that those would help, but we still see teenagers smoking. We still see teenagers doing other things. And we thought we were catching them at an early age. The unfortunate part is I think so much of it is they watch what their parents do. And peer pressure. So I think that we have to find some other type of program that will really get into it. And Ray mentioned earlier, the numbers of grandparents raising grandchildren. I practice family law, and it is absolutely amazing to sit in court. And one time you've got a client, you're representing the grandmother, and she's getting custody of the 2 children from the mother and father. The next time we go, the father's dead, and the mother is still using. And I'd really worry about that next generation who have seen this personally, who have had the loss of their parent, and what can we do for that? So I think that a major part of it is reinforcing and getting more crisis intervention people into the schools so that we can help those kids who are dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. And I think what I would do, and maybe Megan's house or Zach's house can help us with the younger people and say, what brought you? What could have been said when you were young to prevent you from doing this? I think we need to bring some of these recovering alcoholic and addiction people into the schools and having them speak to the kids on a personal level.
And would you support the introduction of Narcan into local public schools?
Yes, I would. Anything to save a life of a child or their parent or grandparent who's there.
Okay. And to Ray.
Yeah, I agree. I would support Narcan in the schools. I mean, we have to recognize that with the opioid crisis, we have a lot of responsibility to bear here, right? The state agencies, like I mentioned earlier, that are paying for it, the role of Big Pharma that we allowed to spread these pills around. We have a lot of responsibility, and we can't let the children down, right? So I would support it in the school. As far as prevention, I'm really going to go back to, we have to get serious about the dosing guidelines. This there's a couple of us that are older here, and we didn't have these issues when we were kids, and we had, and I'm not talking about people with chronic pain. I'm talking about people who have dental work or shoulder surgery, and then end up addicted on these opioids. I think that's where we have to focus on prevention, right? And again, I'm going to say we need to crack down hard on drug dealers, and take from we got to dry up the source. Right? That's the only way we're really going to start working on this problem, right?
Thank
Any
you.
follow-ups, though? You
No.
good? Okay, excellent.
Thanks.
All right. So now I'm going to ask the next question. This is going to be one of our community questions. And then we're going to do a speed round. And then after that, we're going to take our 20-minute break. So just so everybody knows, we will be back after that 20-minute break. So don't change the channel, or if you do, come back in 20 minutes. All right. So your question from the community is, what experiences in your life have prepared you for this candidacy?
My turn?
Ray.
Ray.
Ray first, yep.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't think, as far as the actual work that I've been doing, I don't think anything has prepared me. Right? I'm knocking doors. I'm just running crazy all the time, setting things up, but it's been a great experience. As far as actually doing the job, I think I bring a unique experience in that I'm a 25-year industry. I worked 25 years in private industry, where I've been used to innovation and looking at innovate new ways to do things. Right?
There you go.
But that's been my career, is looking at complex problems, getting people together, and coming up with solutions. And then now that I became an accountant and a CPA a few years back, I've been dealing with municipal budgets and municipal budgets in my life, and balancing budgets and creating budgets. So I'm going to lean on a lot of my managerial experience, a lot of my management accounting experience, and then my desire to want to work hard and be a public servant, and give back to the community.
Excellent. And to Colleen?
So, let's see. Being a public servant my entire life, I put myself through law school, put myself through undergrad, was able to work at the State House for 8 years as a legislative aide, drafted legislation, went to meetings on behalf of my boss, and then ran for the office when the seat was open. I've been there 24 years as a state representative, so certainly I have the experience. I've had the experience of being in leadership. I've had the experiences of being a backbencher, but still being able to get things done. On a personal level, I haven't really talked about it as much as I have this year. My dad, God rest his soul, passed away in 2010. He was a recovering alcoholic. I grew up with that in my family. He fortunately was sober for 30 years when he passed. But I saw what addiction does to a family. I saw, fortunately, we had a positive outcome. He became a drug and alcohol counselor after he retired from the Drake Public Schools. He and my mom were very involved in AA and Al-Anon. So that gave me an opening to understand a lot more of the addiction issues we face. And I lived with them. I took care of them as they were elderly, and saw the system of medical care of seniors and advocating for them. Which is a huge, huge issue that we have with the seniors in the community. And of a certain generation, they believe everything that the doctor says is absolute. And you need someone who's going to advocate, who's going to question them, who's going to ask them the right questions, and someone to make sure that they're taking the right medications at the right times and so forth. So I had quite the experience with both mom and dad, with the medical facilities in the communities all the way into Boston and so forth. So that gave me a great experience as well. So, so the day-to-day working in the legislature and in the State House for 32 years now, working in the communities, as a legislator, as a family law attorney, I have become a better representative because I see what happens in the courts. I see what happens in families today. It really is a tough situation to look at every day. But I think all of my experiences make me a listener, I can understand things more, and I can give them options on how to handle certain things.
Excellent. Thank you both for your answers on that. That was great. All right, so now we're going to do a quick speed round, and then we're going to take our break. So here we go. You ready? Okay. All right. First one, Red Sox or Houston Astros?
Red Sox.
Sox, of course.
It's an easy one. Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks?
Dunkin' Donuts.
My own coffee. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. That's fine. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Netflix or Hulu?
Netflix.
Netflix.
Okay. Cake or pie?
Cake.
Pie.
Favorite Disney movie?
Beauty and the Beast.
You got one?
I have no idea.
You can get help from the audience.
Yeah,
Tim's
I have
over
no
there.
idea.
Poll the
A
audience.
Disney movie. Little Mermaid. How could I
There we go.
forget?
All right.
How
All right.
could I forget Little
Here's a good
Mermaid?
one. Dogs or cats?
Cats.
Dogs.
Okay. Mountains or beach?
Beach.
That's a tough one.
I think beach too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last book you read?
It was.
Can be a law book too.
Yeah, no. It was actually a book by Amy C. And it was. I did it for that garden club. Something. The Secret Fan.
FERC Accounting 101.
There we go. All right. That's exciting. Mac or PC?
PC.
PC.
Okay. Oh, boo. Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
Pepsi.
Okay. Favorite style of music?
Rock.
Easy listening.
Okay. Texting or talking on the phone? That's a good one.
Texting.
I still prefer talking. It drives my daughter crazy, but but I'm a talker still.
All right. Would you rather be a movie star or a rock star?
Movie star.
Movie star, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Favorite James Bond? This one's my favorite. Sean Connery, Pierce Brosnan, or Daniel Craig?
Where's Roger Moore?
You can use them too. If you
I
want.
asked that.
Yeah, where's Roger Moore?
They
What-
added one. I only
What was
had.
the first one?
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery.
There you
that's
go.
the one.
Yeah.
All right. My favorite too. Which game did you watch on Sunday? Red Sox or Patriots?
Pats. And back and forth. Little back and forth, I have to admit.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was working in the office.
Oh, that's a good answer. All right. All right. Excellent. Thank you both for your answers on that. That was a
Thank
lot
you.
of fun. So we're going to take a quick 20-minute break. We will be right back after that break. So don't go anywhere. We're definitely going to come back and have lots more questions for the candidates. So definitely stay tuned for that. Yeah, we'll catch you on the flip side, everybody. See you in a few minutes. All right, we are back with Tyngsborough TV's 36th Middlesex Debate. I want to remind everybody at home you can watch this debate on multiple different avenues. You can watch it on Facebook, on the various pages we share it across. You can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on tyngsboroughma.gov. You can watch it in Tyngsborough on Comcast 8, Verizon 29, and in Drake on Comcast 99. I think I said Comcast 8 and Verizon 29 on Tyngsborough. Apologies if I goofed that up. It's been a long day. And you can also listen to it on 980 WCAP, so you can get this in a whole bunch of different ways. And also don't forget that if you have a question for the candidates, we are actively watching the Facebook streams. I've got a group of folks behind the curtain over there. If Julia wants to punch up that camera really quickly, I just want to show you what's going on behind the scenes. So I've got a crew of people that are behind this screen over here watching and just collecting your questions. So you can get those questions in multiple different ways. Tweet us, #36debate. You can leave the questions in Facebook or YouTube comment sections. You can also call us, 978-743-5352. And you can email us, debate@tyngsboroughma.gov. So any one of those ways, if you have questions for the candidates, feel free to please leave those in. In just a few moments, we're going to get to the ballot questions, which should be pretty interesting. But before we do that, I'm going to go through one more round of our panelists, starting with Mr. Bill Gilman. If you would, sir, ask your question.
Thank you, Steve.
You're welcome.
All right, let's talk about State House leadership. It's always a fun topic. In both houses over the last couple of decades, there have been multiple scandals involving leaders in the House and the Senate. Some people have called for increased public access and transparency to the State House business. Some people have called for term limits. So I guess I'm starting with Representative Gary on this. What do you believe needs to be done to clean up Beacon Hill?
Well, I think that we have taken many steps to increase and make the strongest ethics laws in the nation. That's what we have here in Massachusetts. You've got to remember, you may hear of one person or two people having issues, but there are 200 legislators, and there are a lot of good individuals who work on a day-to-day basis for their community. Certainly, have we had some bad eggs? Yes, absolutely. But I think that transparency has been opening up. I think that one area that I'm not really thrilled with is opening up the conference committee sessions. There tends to be, politicians tend to like to work to the crowd, and unfortunately you're going to see more and more stalemates if the press is in there recording on every single negotiation that's going on in a bill, because then people are going to be even more stubborn on their side and not give in. And compromise is not a bad word when you're dealing with 200 legislators trying to get something good for the Commonwealth. So I do believe that the bad eggs should be out. We have an ethics committee, and ethics laws, as I said, are the strongest in the nation. And we have removed members in both the House and the Senate. And so I think there is a process and a policy, and it does happen. But I think that term limits, obviously 24 years later, I'm certainly believe that term limits are at the ballot box, that if people continue to elect people to represent them, they should have the opportunity to do that. And I'm grateful that they've continued for 24 years.
Let me follow up with you before we get to Mr. Lisinski. There was a series of, you mentioned a few bad apples, and that's true. The problem is some of those bad apples, one after another, were speakers of the House of Representatives. Not to put too fine a point on it, but it seems as though that the body of the House, and in this case the Democrats who chose the leaders, chose poorly, failed, elected bad leaders. How do you guys do better if you guys maintain the majority, which you should? How do you do better to choose better leaders?
I don't know that necessarily the people were a bad choice. I believe, I remember Dr. DeUlis, who was superintendent of schools for 50 years in Drake. When I first got elected, he said to me, the most dangerous word in the English language is power. And I believe that that's what happened to some of those people, is that power got to them, and they weren't necessarily bad people to begin with. So certainly I think that we need to continue to have membership looking at it, and we have had investigations. I was chair of the ethics committee a while back under Finneran, and one of the things that we learned back then was ethics, anything that went before ethics was private and confidential unless there was found to be something that violated the law. Then it became public because people, in the old days, people who were going through a divorce would call up and make some allegation against their husband who was a rep, and then all of a sudden you've got an ethics violation, an ethics investigation, and just that enough would be enough to ruin somebody's their career. So if there's an investigation, you can't say there's an investigation ongoing. Only if they're found to be in violation do they release that. Because otherwise, if you're investigating and there was nothing found, just the investigation could hurt you. So that's the rules of the House, and that's what we've done. So you may not know of other investigations that have gone on.
Mr. Lisinski, if you get elected, what would you like to see done to clean up Beacon Hill?
Well, I'm sorry, but the situation that we had in Beacon Hill was a lot worse than a few bad apples. I mean, we had 3 speakers in a row, progressively getting worse. The last one going to jail. Then we had the Senate president that had to resign. There is clearly in this state a culture of corruption that, and it's not just on Beacon Hill. It's permeating through many agencies. We have to do something drastically different. Now, as far as even if you look at the current speaker, we know about the unindicted co-conspirator at the probation and all that. But I think what insults me even more is that he as a show to try to establish faith in the legislature, he created term limits for the speaker, and then revoked it before it had a chance to take effect. So, I mean, we have some serious issues with corruption in the state, and I don't think we can just, gloss it over as a few bad apples. I mean, these are our leaders, right? They're supposed to be saying the sample. Now, I agree with one thing Colin said, that power corrupts, right? The speaker is the most powerful person in the state, really. And this goes to part of the reason why I'm running in the first place. I firmly believe that we need to get back to two-party balance in this state. Two-party balance does a lot as far as checks and balances. And if we could get back to a little two-party balance, there'd be someone more able to watch the hen house as well. It would be checks on each other, right? Like I said, and that's one of the main reasons. I think two-party balance cures a lot of evils. I think it would, start a lot of spirited debate on trying to get more money back to the cities and towns and things of that nature. But we have a serious corruption problem in this state, and we need to deal with it.
Just to follow up, because Representative Gary touched on something that you had mentioned earlier about the transparency of some of the committee meetings and whatnot, and she made a good point about that sometimes representatives would play to the cameras, or if it's a case of ethics, you don't want to have an ethics committee hearing out in public and ruin somebody's career for no reason. But you talked about more transparency. Doesn't that make sense, what she's saying, that there are reasons that not everything is open to the public?
Oh, I agree with that, Bill. But certainly if someone is being investigated for an ethics violation and there's no proof, that should be private. But we can still see how people voted. That's what I want to see, how people voted.
Okay.
If I could just follow up, though, it's important to say that there are members of both the House and the Senate on the Ethics Committee. And the Ethics Committee, any member can bring a complaint against any member. And so, to say there's a culture of corruption tends to make it seem like it's ongoing and existing in a large majority. And I would argue that it's not, and that people need to be very careful about what they allege of corruption.
Very good. Thank you.
And to Teddy.
Alrighty. A lot of people have been applauding criminal justice reform, which was recently put in place here in Massachusetts. Yet, in my line of work, I'm constantly reporting about and talking about stories in which someone accused of committing a violent crime, has also, in their very recent past, committed another violent crime, often using a handgun in committing both of those crimes. If we're really concerned about guns, to a point where legal gun owners feel like their rights are being infringed upon, why are so many gun offenders, multiple-time gun offenders, still walking around on the streets?
I think we started with Ray on the last one.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, so Colleen.
Okay, so first of all, I support the right to bear arms. I have my license to carry myself, but I think that the courts really have to answer for what they're doing with these. The prosecution has to answer for what they're charging these people with. I know a young man, a young father, who actually went to jail. It's one of the few cases where somebody actually went to jail for having a gun without a license because his license expired. He had moved to another location. They didn't get it in the mail. And fortunately, we got him hooked up with a good attorney, and he was out on Christmas Eve with his children. But so when you see that, and that just happened to be somebody that got stopped, rather than somebody who's actually used the gun illegally, I think that we have to have real concerns. The criminal justice reform that we did was to give people a second chance who had done their time or who had shown that they were okay, and if they'd gone 20 years without getting into trouble, to wipe it clean and give them a fresh start. Help juveniles not have the crimes. There are real concerns about some of those things. The situation that I've talking to Steve Manning from the Tyngsborough Police and talking about what they can and cannot do in the schools when someone is disturbing the peace in the schools and they can't arrest them for that. Where they most likely would be given a slap on the wrist and sent home without any kind of record, but yet they can't do that. And there's turmoil going on in the schools. So that's another issue that we have to do. But one of the big parts that I think that we have to call for is bail reform. There's a lot of this is happening that people, the idea with bail is that you're not supposed to make it so high that that person could not ever get out. But there's a point where you have to see the significance of the crime that they're doing and say, maybe he shouldn't be out, and we're going to make it that high that it can't get out. It seems like we're letting an awful lot of people out on bail, and they shouldn't be.
I'm taking a tougher approach on this. I'm also a gun owner, legal gun owner, and what we have to jump through hoops to, make sure everything's locked right and everything, and which responsible gun owners do. But legal gun owners are probably the safest people because they're so afraid of getting caught, right? But we're not tough enough on violent offenders, right? I'm sorry, if someone commits a crime with a gun, that's a whole nother level. I don't see that those are people we want to say, he's been good and we'll wipe his record clean. A gun is, very, and especially in someone like that who's committed a violent crime, we need to be tougher on these people. So I'm not for wiping records clean or being in any way lenient with violent offenders who use guns.
What I suspect might be happening is that somebody arrested for a gun-involved crime is eventually pleading down, getting the gun charge dropped, pleading guilty to something else, thereby avoiding the mandatory jail time. Should we get tougher with that? Should we not allow, if you're accused of a gun crime, should you be allowed to plead down?
No, I don't think so. And even the I'm sorry, did I interrupt you? But we had that Bartley Fox law. For, if you were caught with a gun, unregistered gun, it was a year in jail. And I don't know when the last time someone was prosecuted under that. I guess they plea out or whatever. But I'm sorry. I mean, we need to crack down on violent criminals. All right? If you have a gun and you're committing violent crimes, I think they should throw the book at you.
Absolutely, I agree with them. I do think that there might be opportunities when the DA may use them as a witness for some bigger crime, and that might be part of their deal to be a witness against somebody who might be the top drug dealer. And certainly that's something that we want to get those top guys out. So it's hard to say on each individual case, but again, I think the judges have to be very, very careful with what they do, and I don't see it happening. There was a judge in Lowell that was called, let's say it was similar to Runaway last name. And it was just everybody that went before him went out the door. Very few got held for anything. And I think that we need to have stronger judges.
Okay. Let me ask a quick follow-up. Do you have something, Teddy?
I was just going to say,
Okay,
should judges, in a quick answer, if that's all right, should judges be reviewed by the legislature and subject to removal?
Well, like I said, I had originally thought of that, but after the debacle of what happened in Washington, I was really concerned that legislators on any level would have that as a political ability to get partisan. I certainly am, like I said, I'm the most bipartisan member of the House. I think I could be a logical person making that judgment, but can I account for that for every other member who may not want the governor's appointment? We do have the Governor's Council. I think that needs to be revamped. I think maybe there needs to be a look of another type of agency or group to make those determinations.
Go ahead, Ray. Did you want to say that?
Yeah, I think those judges should be reviewed, right? And especially if we're going to make public the vote, right? I maintain it's the legislature has a responsibility through the Judiciary Committee to review judges and recommend for impeachment. So I think lenient judges should definitely be reviewed by the Judiciary Committee.
I actually think it might be better. Right now, there's a judicial nominating committee. They're the ones that refer that to the governor as to who might be good judges. And they are not open to any kind of political influence, that if they're the ones that have put forth these judges, they may be the best ones to review them.
So let me ask a quick follow-up to that, because we had a Facebook question come in from Lyle on Facebook. Before we get to Amaris, apologies, Amaris. Would the candidates do anything to work in order to overturn the Attorney General's assault weapons reinterpretation?
Absolutely. I actually joined on with the Republicans to have that. We were looking for her to answer exactly where she felt she had the right to do that. Mm-hmm. And as a matter of fact, as a member of the Judiciary Committee, we sent that letter as well, mm-hmm. And never got a response from either. So certainly I've got an A rating with the Gun Owners Action League, and I stand on their behalf in fighting those.
Excellent, right?
I agree. The assault weapons ban, even if it was, as it was extended in this state, was very specific about what made an assault weapon, and it's clear overreach by the Attorney General's interpretation, and not only that way. I mean, it put a lot of pressure on legitimate licensed gun dealers. Right? I would say that I'm disappointed that the legislature and the governor didn't take a stronger stance on that. And Attorney General's clearly, overreach of power with the interpretation of what the assault weapons ban was.
Excellent.
Actually, to go back to that, it gets to the point that there's a balance of power there. And she is interpreting the law. We make the law. And the fact of the matter is it went to court, and the courts are the ones who are going to determine whether she was right or wrong. So we couldn't just turn around and say, no, you're wrong, we're going to change it. It's really the legislature, the judicial branch, that would make that determination.
Great. Thank you for the answers. So now we're going to go over to Amaris from the Lowell Sun, who's going to ask our next question. There you go, Amaris.
Hello. My next question is, in both towns, there's some pushback against an increase in housing development, with some residents saying it affects their quality of life. How would you work with local selectmen to address their concerns?
That's for
both.
I think
Yeah.
we started with Ray on the last one, I think,
Okay.
right? Yeah,
So-
I think. Anyways.
So I think that, the town of Tyngsborough has reached its affordable housing quota. So they have certainly done that and are open to getting more grants because of that. Drake, every time we try to increase our affordable housing stock, those houses that are affordable under that the definition, but they don't have a lifetime commitment to it. It's not written in their deed. It's not funded by a program. They don't count towards that. So I can certainly see that. I see that we have a great need for senior citizen housing. Unfortunately, the state agencies think that family housing is the most important. So if they want to do mixed housing with seniors and families, I've heard some horror stories from some of my colleagues from Lynn and some of the other cities where they do that. My argument has always been, if we help to get the seniors out of their houses into smaller elderly housing, you open up those houses that are probably more affordable for those affordable families. Instead, the seniors are stuck in these big homes because there's no place for them to go that they can afford to go. So I think that we have to take a huge step forward. I know that just last night, the Drake Housing Authority was looking to revert back the money and the land for Richardson Avenue, the property there on Greenmont Avenue, and give it back to the town so the town can work with CTI to get some development in there. And it probably would be some mixed. We do have mixed on Parker Avenue and over by School Street. So I think that we have to make sure for every family that comes in, we have to remember the families that are coming in are bringing children into the schools, and we have to be able to afford that. So it has to be a comprehensive town approach to it.
I think what you're talking about is the 40B developments, and if your town, like as Colleen said, Tyngsborough has reached its 10%, Drake has not. If you haven't reached your 10% and it meets the zoning requirements, there's not a lot anybody's going to do to stop it. That's the law. As far as elderly housing, Drake has had for a long time has been trying to do something with elderly housing, and just can't get off the dime. The town bought the Richardson property with conservation money, sold it to the Drake Housing Authority for $1. There were plans that started, plans that stopped. They delayed so long that the state money reverted to mixed family as opposed to elderly, and now it's going to come back. So, I agree. We can't have all houses. We need some affordable housing units. And like I said, if it's 40B and the town hasn't reached its limit, it's going to go in. If it hasn't, then the town can stop some of the affordable housing if they choose. I don't think they should choose. I'd just like to see us focus on the elderly more.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Now we are going to talk about the 3 ballot questions that are on the ballot this election season. So, for folks who don't know at home, November 6th, you will see 3 ballot questions on your ballot, and you will be able to vote on these. So we want to know what the candidates' positions are on these. So the first one, ballot question number 1, do you believe that patient and nurse ratios should be established?
My answer to that question in itself, the way it's written, is no. We actually, several years ago in the legislature, made a step forward in saying, okay, we'll start with the ICU units and make a staff patient ratio there to see how that worked. But certainly the way that this ballot question is written, we're going to need thousands more nurses within 36 days. We already have trouble finding a school nurse for the town of Drake. It's going to be completely impossible at that point. We do have a lack of nurses. We have a lack of teaching nurses to be able to get more kids into nursing programs. So I think one of the differences between this and California was California didn't have the $25,000 a day penalty, and they also had 3 years to put it into effect, not 36 weeks. So, or 36 days. So it's really, it's the way it was written. That's one concern I have about ballot questions, is the people writing it write it the way they want without taking in effect all of the consequences. And there will be major consequences, especially at the emergency rooms. They will have to shut the doors when they reach capacity.
Right.
I am also no on question 1. I don't think we need another unfunded government mandate. I don't think we need government intervention in healthcare. Healthcare should be between the doctor and patient. I'm very concerned also about emergency room backups. What's going to happen? Someone's in the emergency room and there's no bed upstairs. They're going to pile up there. I asked one person who was a proponent, and I said, well, so what if I come to the emergency room and there's not enough nurses? What happens? Oh, they'll take you to the hospital. I don't want to hear that when I come to the emergency room. I think that healthcare is left to be decided with the doctors and the patient, and government has no role in this.
Okay. All right. Ballot question number 2. Do you think it is the state's role to run a committee to amend the U.S. Constitution? So states' rights versus federal rights.
No. I don't want a committee to study setting up amendments to the Constitution. I like my Constitution just the way it is. I know this is really a free speech issue with the Citizen United decisions, and what they're trying to do is get money out of politics from corporations, which I'm a big proponent of getting money out of politics, but I don't like being able to pick winners and losers. Why can this group donate what they want, but a corporation is not anything it can't? it's a free speech issue, and I'm a big no.
Okay, Colleen?
I'm actually a yes on this one. I think that there have been issues on regards to money in politics and what's the difference between a person and a corporation. So I don't think this doesn't cost any money. It would allow for people to put together appointments from the governor and from the speaker and so forth, so a bipartisan commission to look at it and to draft something and then put it forward to the rest of us. Again, as I said, that it doesn't cost us anything, and I think it would be a good idea to have someone look at it.
Okay. All right. And ballot question number 3. Do you think the Senate Bill 2407 regarding gender identity should be upheld, appealed, or is it covered under gender as a whole already?
I would say I think it should be repealed. That I have always said that there is a loophole in the law. The law was not drafted to continue public safety involved in it. And again, I'm going to say I do not believe transgender individuals are danger, but I do believe in, and having served on the Criminal Justice Committee and the Judiciary Committee, and having received the award from the Molly Bish Foundation about safety of children, it's something that has always been in my mind, and I can only imagine, and there have been some discussions of whether there are in fact people who are going into the wrong bathrooms and taking advantage of the situation. And if they get caught, it's going to be, the police are going to be concerned about being questioned for even questioning them. There's no definition, there's no proof, there's just you feel that day that you are transgender and you can change your mind walking out the door. So I think that and I've asked for people to help us fill in that gap, and we haven't done so yet. So I do say it needs to be repealed until that loophole is filled.
Okay. Ray?
I am no on question 3 as well. I think it's a poorly crafted piece of legislation. When legislation is made, it has to consider all parties. I don't think women and children should be afraid to go to the bathroom. And I think what I find is the worst is that it doesn't even exclude sexual offenders from the law. So if a sexual offender could have that same right. So my position is send it back to the legislature, repeal it, and have the legislature create a bill that protects all people.
Great. Thank you both very much for your answers. So now we're going to go to a live community question, which we're happy to have. And we're going to ask Miss Kathleen Spaeth.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Spaeth, and I live at 2 Minute Man Drive in Tyngsborough, Mass. Do you support putting in another exit on the Nashua side of Route 3?
That
to Ray on that one, I believe. Yes.
Yeah. I would leave that up to the local community. If that you think there's a need in Tyngsborough for something like that, I would support it. That's a local decision, and I would support the will of the locals.
You know, I think I have not even heard that. I've heard a lot about New Hampshire wanting to have the train come through Tyngsborough, yet they haven't even discussed it with anybody in Tyngsborough. So certainly if there was going to be another exit north of the Massachusetts border, I think that all the parties should be together and have a discussion about it. I don't think one state should do something that will affect the other without taking them into consideration and discussing it.
Any follow-ups?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Following up in that respect, would you support the state of Massachusetts to generate economic income to the city of, the town of Tyngsborough, excuse me. The talk of putting that exit in was to get more economic development, and specifically down to the 3A Middlesex Road area, so we could keep our tax revenue in Tyngsborough instead of it going over into the Nashua border.
Yeah. Then I'm a big yeah.
Okay, so I thought you said it was going to be on the north side of the border.
Well, like you, I've heard different rumors about what's going to be there and what isn't going to be there. But as a Tyngsborough resident, I see that a lot of development is not happening on that 3A Middlesex Road and going over to the Nashua area. So I guess what we're trying to figure out is to bring more economic development into the town of Tyngsborough. What would you think about, expanding that Route 3 corridor? And I have also thought about the transportation center as well. So,
Yeah, I think one of the concerns that I would have is what kind of land would we have to take? Whose land would we have to take? What are the benefits that we would see? It's got to be a long-term positive investment and not just another easy access to that location. Are we going to bring more people in, or is it just going to be an additional exit? So I think that we need to look at that. One of the big things about that Middlesex Road area is we need to get water up there. People can't build, they're having to do wells up there, and businesses don't want to put businesses on properties that only have wells. They want to get water. And we're working on the sewer. We got an $11 million low-interest loan from the Mass Water Resource Authority, or whatever that, I forget the agency now. It's been a long debate. So we've got a low-interest loan on that, so that's going to help with the sewage going up in that area. So businesses will come there if there's water and sewer and access. So we have access through the 3 different exits that we have, but the water and sewer, I think, is the most important.
great,
Okay,
thank you.
Satisfied? Good. Okay. All right. So now we're going to do one more quick community question, then we're going to jump to some speed rounds, and we're actually winding down time. We've got about 5 minutes left, so
Wow.
we've gone really quick. All right. So this one is from the community. How will you represent the diverse populations of both Tyngsborough and Dracut?
Was it my turn?
I
His
believe
turn?
it's back
Okay.
to you, yep.
So I guess I have been representing the diverse communities of Dracut and Tyngsborough. I do believe that they have an awful lot alike. There's a great population in both communities, and I consider it one district, not 2 different communities. So I don't really know exactly what they mean about the diverse communities. So
That's just what I was giving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I,
Fair enough.
I have to admit, I was confused by diverse as well. I've done a lot of door knocking, meet a lot of people, great people in both towns. I think the towns are similar, but have their own issues, and I think they actually fit really well together.
I'm thinking what they meant was by diverse ethnicities, nationality, so on and so forth,
yeah.
various things there, but fair enough. All right, so we've got a number of speed round questions here we're going to go through, and I think we might even have time for one more question, so I'll let you guys fight amongst yourselves
All right.
who wants to ask that
All right.
last question. All right, so speed round. Morning or night?
Morning,
Night,
Okay. Windows down or air conditioning?
air conditioning,
air conditioning,
Oh. Country or city?
country,
country,
Okay. Apple juice or orange juice?
orange,
apple.
Okay. Favorite movie of all time? Your favorite movie?
Ooh. Jimmy, what's the one? Bailey's, the Bailey.
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life.
There you go.
That's
Okay.
it.
The Longest Day,
Oh, good movie.
Yeah.
Favorite color?
Green,
blue,
Okay. Chicken or beef?
beef,
chicken,
Okay. Winter or summer?
summer,
summer,
Okay. Beer or wine?
wine,
beer,
AM or FM?
FM. Except WCAP.
yeah,
I was waiting for that, actually. Nice recovery.
yeah,
Vinyl or MP3?
Ooh,
That's a tough one.
vinyl,
MP3,
Okay. Oh, there's another. Vanilla or chocolate?
vanilla,
chocolate,
All right. And coffee or tea?
coffee.
coffee.
All right. Gentlemen, who would like to ask the next question?
Give this to my colleague here.
Okay.
I put my notes away now.
There we go, Teddy.
Take them back out. All right. A recent report showed that on the basis of solvency in 5 separate categories, Massachusetts ranks 47th among the 50 states. In 2016, our long-term liabilities were 275% of the state's total assets. How can you guarantee people who have paid into a system for an entire lifetime that their money's going to be there in the future?
Acha?
I think
I think it was to you, yes.
Okay. I don't think you can. Right? I mean, that's a huge debt we're carrying. I mean, of course we are, but this is another symptom of the long time one-party rule in this state. Right? You can always, push off spending today by borrowing money and pushing it down, and you also can the accumulation of the pensions. Now, that's going to start to show really soon now, because the new accounting regulations require those pensions to be funded. It's down the road. I think it's like 2035 or something. But that's really going to start affecting our state now and our bond rating. So once again, I'm going to throw this back to a situation where I think we need to get back to two-party balance, that make some tough choices, especially financial choices, because we have to control the debt in the state. Because it's owed down the road doesn't mean it's not going to happen.
If I can just do a quick follow-up,
Yeah.
and you
Sure,
can
just
answer
make
the
it quick.
same
We
as
are running
well,
down.
Representative Gary. So where will the money come from? Where will you stop spending money
Yeah.
to get the money to make sure these liabilities are funded?
Yeah, that's the real hard choice, right? And we're talking $100 billion, right? It's a failure of the system leading up to this, right? So to be able to start saying we're going to start cutting here or cutting there to make up for the failures of the past, that's a real tough question, right? So it's not. There's no easy answers there where that money's going to come from, because I won't vote for new taxes for it if I'm elected.
So we have actually taken major steps towards funding the unfunded pension liability. And when we've had good years, we've put money into that. We've paid it forward. We've also lowered the numbers of years that the debt goes out. So we have, in every budget, when we've had some extra, we've put it away to the unfunded pension liability. You have to remember, we have to have a balanced budget. We always have a balanced budget. And that is just part of it, is we have to make sure that we have a good bond rating, that we go forward, and we do that. We do put money in from the very beginning. We put money in the unfunded pension liability.
All right. Anything else, Teddy? You good? Okay. So we've come to that point of the evening where we're going to wrap this up, at least as far as with the candidates. Teddy, Bill, and myself are going to chat a little bit after in just a few minutes. I want to thank you both very much. You've been very gracious in attending this evening. I personally I think you've had some great answers, and you've worked very hard tonight at answering the questions. There have been a numerous amount of questions, varied topics and stuff. I hope everybody at home who's been watching on whichever channel you've been watching on has gotten some good information. And on November 6th, when you go to the polls, you'll have some information. You can think back to these conversations and make an informed decision on who your candidate is, who you want to pick for election. So again, I want to thank you both for coming. I want to give you both just 60 seconds to do a quick closing statement. I'll start with Colleen.
Great.
And we'll wrap it up from there.
Well, thank you, Steve, and to Teddy and Bill and Amaris and everybody behind the scenes. I know this has been a lot of work to put together, the people in Drake-It and CAP and all. It's been great to have this debate, and I want to thank Ray for participating in it. It's important that people know where we stand. I'm not a stranger to the people of Drake-It and Tyngsborough. I've been here. I've been serving on your behalf for 24 years. I want to continue to do so. I'm accessible. I'm in the community. I'm active. I listen to people and their concerns. I try to help them with constituent cases. I help the communities get money for their projects, and then I vote on the legislation the way I feel that they want me to vote, not the way the leadership wants me to vote. I am the most bipartisan member of the House, and I'd like to continue that. So I'm asking for your vote on November 6th.
Excellent. And Ray?
Well, I'm running because I think we deserve better than business as usual on Beacon Hill. We need to get our fiscal house in order. We need to get corruption under control. Like so many of the residents, I'm concerned about the future of the state and the future for our children. So I think we need to get back to two-party government in this system, the natural accountability that supplies. So I'm running because I want to be your voice, your voice as an independent legislator up at the State House. And I hope I can count on your support. You can count on my honesty and integrity, and I respectfully ask for your vote on November 6th.
Great. Thank you again both
Thank
very
you.
much.
Yeah.
And you are now excused for the
Thank
evening.
you.
You may relax, have a deep breath, and a sigh of relief. All right. So we're going to take a quick 2-minute break. Might not even be that long because I want to get to a little bit of conversation here, but we're just going to take a really fast break so that Colleen and Ray can step out, and we'll see you in just a couple of minutes.
Thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you. Very well done.
right, we are back to wrap up this, what's been a pretty fascinating debate, I think. Gentlemen, I'd like to actually defer immediately to you. How do you feel the candidates did?
I thought it was an excellent debate. I thought that both candidates did an excellent job articulating their stances on different issues. I don't think that any of the questions flummoxed them. They seemed prepared for what everybody asked, and we had a lot of different sources of questions and a lot of different topics, as you mentioned. So I think anybody watching this, anybody rewatching this, is going to have an excellent opportunity to differentiate between the two candidates. But I think they both did an excellent job.
Yeah, I agree with Bill. I think both candidates acquitted themselves very well. Regardless of what happens on Election Day, I think the people of Drayton and Tyngsborough are going to be very well represented. Both, obviously, Colleen Gary has been doing this for 24 years. She knows the issues. She knows the communities. She's not going to get tripped up at any debates over any questions. She knows her stuff. I thought, for Ray Lazinski as a challenger, he needed to show that he, too, has a grasp of the issues, and I think he did it very well. I think he's articulate, and he has some good answers, some good solutions. A lot of agreement between the two of them on a lot of issues. There wasn't as much disagreement as you might have thought between a Democrat and a Republican.
Actually, mostly it was on the speed round questions with the disagreement.
Yeah, coffee or tea and pie and cake, really.
Well, I think that where Ray pounded away some of his themes was on what he mentioned in his closing statement, the perception of business as usual on Beacon Hill, whether it is in the areas of corruption, whether it's in the areas of the spending and wasteful spending and needing to do a better job with that. And I think that's where he was trying to basically pin Colleen to the Democratic leadership and the Democratic rank and file. She was making a concerted effort to separate herself from that. I think that she recognizes that that there's not a lot of, in this district, there's not a lot of profit to be had by latching on to the rank and file Democratic leadership. And so she repeatedly mentioned about being bipartisan, working with the Republicans, being independent. And Ray, kept coming back with that there needed to be a change.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's the challenge for Ray, right?
Right.
You win as a challenger by showing that you can't continue with business as usual. But, with Representative Gary, business as usual hasn't been that bad for Drayton and Tyngsborough. So he has to turn this into a statewide race and really try to indict the leadership of the Democratic Party and the way things are done on Beacon Hill. I thought the corruption part of it, the discussion, was the strongest part for him. I think he really needs to do that a lot more going forward. He needs to really hone in on that theme, because it's difficult for somebody who's a member of the incumbent party to really stand out. Representative Gary votes against leadership an awful lot. You do that often enough, you start losing money. You're not able to bring the bacon home back to the district, so it's a fine line. Ray has to show how, if you have enough Republicans in there, you can kind of fight that to some degree, and then he has to show that he's the right Republican to win in this race, because people like change unless they're happy, and I get the impression they're generally happy here in the area.
Now let me ask you this: if you can erase Colleen's experience and consider them both as fresh faces, do you think that either candidate stood out on any particular issues? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but do you think they had any real standouts on anything?
It's a good question. I don't necessarily think that on any of the topics, either of them brought up any ideas, proposals that made you say, "Oh wow, I never thought of that before." Oh, that might be something really good to put into effect. I think that one thing that didn't get discussed was about Governor Baker and his role in the whole idea of bipartisanship working across the aisle. I think one of the areas that Ray might have missed an opportunity was talking about if they get enough new Republicans, they've gotten more within the last couple of elections. If they get enough, no, they're not going to take control, but they will have enough to protect any vetoes. And that really is the goal of the Republican Party right now, is to protect Baker vetoes, give him a little bit more stroke. So, and I think that was a missed opportunity. But really, it didn't jump. There wasn't anything that jumped out at me as a wow moment.
Yeah, same here. The governor is bipartisan because he has to be.
Right.
You know,
Right.
would he be as bipartisan if he could have enough bodies to uphold his vetoes? Then we'd really see
That's a fair point,
the
yeah.
true Governor Baker. And that's the argument that Ray has to make. And also the voters have to decide, okay, well, even if we make the change here, are there enough communities in the Commonwealth going to make a difference? Are we going to get stuck with a Republican who has absolutely no clout, which a lot of communities are dealing with as well?
Right.
True,
That's right. That's exactly a good point. That's always the question for any of the Republican candidates is, can you, if you get in there as a decided minority, can you deliver for your district? Will you have any clout? Can you do anything? So, and that in these next couple of weeks is certainly going to be one of the obstacles he's going to face. He's going to need to get that point across.
Excellent. Do you gentlemen have any final thoughts? We're going to wrap this up now.
I hope, personally, I know there's been some discussion about it, but I hope that they get together again. I thought that their discussions, their debates, I thought was good, informative, and I hope that between now and Election Day, I hope they get a chance to debate one more time.
I agree. Any opportunities they have to talk to the voters and address questions, they're going to get different questions at the next forum, different personalities, different people from the public. I just want to thank you, Steve, for this is an important step. This is a way for folks to get informed. So thank you for all the hard work you put together, and thanks for inviting me and Bill and everyone else to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
You're very welcome. I was very happy to have all you guys as well as Amaris from the Sun. We did put in a lot of effort on this. We really worked to make this as open as possible. Obviously, we couldn't have a studio audience, but as you gentlemen have seen in the room, there's no room left for anybody to stand. It's actually pretty full. But it was a lot of fun putting this together. I hope everybody at home had a lot of fun watching this and got to get some good information. Again, you were able to watch this on a multitude of different avenues, whether it be radio, TV, or streaming, and you could get your questions in through a bunch of different places too. So try to open it up. And you're right. I think maybe it would be interesting to see another debate happen. Who knows if that'll happen? I'm going to leave that up to somebody else because I'm going to go home and have a nap and a cup of tea.
Let Drake worry about it, right?
Exactly right. I'll let them hash that out. So I want to thank you guys for being here, and Amaris as well. I really want to thank my crew on the other side of the curtain here. Let me show you guys these. They have been working very diligently at gathering the questions as the night's gone on and coordinating them and giving them to me, as well as my tech staff getting this all up and running and going. So it's been a lot of fun. Again, thank you to everybody that's here. Thank you to everybody for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. There's been quite a number of comments on this Facebook feed, so that was actually pretty fun to watch. And with all that said, folks, I hope you all have a really great night, and I will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.